In our next Mark Minute, we introduce one of our companion orders, with Brian Williams discussing the Allied Masonic Degrees.
Hi, Brian. Can you tell me what the Allied Masonic Degrees is all about? Why is it so named? And how does this order fit in with the Craft, Royal Arch and Mark narrative?
Well, that's a very good question, and it's well worth going through it in detail. But essentially, there was a declaration in 1813 by the two Grand Lodges, the Ancients and the Moderns, and they declared at that time that ancient masonry consisted of 3 degrees, and they were the entered apprentice, the fellow craft, and the master mason, including the Royal Arch. But at that particular point, that left over 270 other orders who had no known governing body anywhere in the world. So they were a little bit miffed, is the best way to describe it. So examples of these were the Secret Monitor, the Operatives, St. Lawrence the Martyr, the Red Cross of Babylon, to mention but a couple. So what became of these orders and degrees? Well, some, like the Mark in 1856, formed their own Grand Lodge, but there still remained many degrees and orders which had no governing body. So on the 9th of August in 1879, the Grand Council of the Order of the Allied Masonic Degrees was formed and took jurisdiction over all these waifs and strays from all the other orders and degrees that were floating about. The first Grand Master, would you believe, was a chap called the Reverend George Portal, who was the same brother who created the Mark Benevolent Fund, which is where one of our links starts with the Mark. The original 4 degrees were the Grand High Priest, the St. Lawrence the Martyr, the Knight of Constantinople, and the Red Cross of Babylon, a whole bundle of mouthfuls of words. The Grand Tylers, the Tylers is spelt with an I, not a Y, was added at a much later date. So any degree or order that did not have a governing body would be placed under the jurisdiction of this Grand Council. Nowadays, these orders or degrees are known as companion orders. They used to be called side degrees because it was normal practice in a craft lodge in those days for a group of brethren to take a brother to one side of the craft meeting and confer one of these 270 degrees in a short ceremony, complete with the passwords and grips, hence the side version of degrees. The ancients allowed any craft lodge to work any Masonic degrees, but since the formation of the United Grand Lodge in 1813, many other degrees continue to be worked, and several form their own Grand Lodges, for example, the Mark. So the Grand Council of the Allied Masonic Degrees was formed to bring together some of these remaining degrees. But one degree of the Secret Monitor and the Order of Holy Wisdom were also included in the Allied, would you believe? But in 1923, a Grand College of Holy Royal Arch and Knight Templar priests for England was erected in Newcastle, and the Grand Council accordingly disclaimed all control of that particular body and its large group of degrees, which accounted for some 18 or 20 degrees, quite a big number to go. In 1931, the Grand Council of the Allied Masonic Degree agreed to cease working their single degree of the Secret Monitor, which, as you know, there's 2 parts of the Secret Monitor. This was the second part of the monitor, so that went back to the OSM. And we also released control of the Operatives around about the same time. So by 1972, the Grand Council became known as the Grand Council of the Order of the Allied Masonic Degrees, and then there were in excess of 200 councils, not lodges, under the banner. The Order of the Allied Masonic Degrees of England and Wales and districts and councils overseas was reconstituted in 1986 and again in 1997, which is its current body. There are 18 districts in the order in England and Wales, with 9 councils at this time in my district of Cheshire and North Wales. I succeeded Peter Talbot in February 2025. So I think that's really covered most of your initial what's it all about, but I can say that those 5 degrees are not linked to each other in any way, shape or form. They just came into being. And I'll explain a little bit later anyway on our next question. But the essential part of it is its variety. Everybody enjoys it, and it is very similar to the mark in its humorous side and its serious side. So I think, Simon, that would end, I think, our first question for you, unless you've got any others to ask me, of course.
No.
So the second question down the line really now asks for the essential lessons that we get from these degrees. And in this part, I'll be able to explain further how we interrelate with the craft and the chapter. So the real charm of our order is its variety. They work 5 degrees. No meeting is therefore the same as the one before. There are different offices and lectures for each degree, so each member has the opportunity to participate in the ceremonies if he so wishes. Participation can be large or small. The ceremonies are very dramatic, with much role playing and enormous fun to perform. Underneath the fun and drama are serious Masonic lessons which cannot fail to enlighten and impress the candidate. The very first degree that you take in the order is called the degree of St. Lawrence the Martyr. And it must be taken first because in this particular degree is where the admin of the council takes place, the reading of the minutes, the admin size, dues, the letters and communications. So that must always be taken first. In this particular one, it shows how Lawrence, who was a religious person in Rome about the 2nd century AD, who refused to betray his principles, which were integrity, hospitality, and fortitude. These are the lessons that we learn in this particular degree. The jewel of the degree is a gridiron in silver, suspended from an orange ribbon with a royal blue edging. Now, it sounds very high-tech, but in practice, the ribbons are an example of the 5 ribbons, which is also the only item of regalia that you need when you join the Allied degree. These 5 degrees, if you buy these jewels, it costs over £100. So in the light of economy, we've replaced it with that version, which has the 5 same symbols on the bottom of the jewel. This one costs about £12, where the earlier one cost more like £100. So you can see why we do it. The difference of the two is on the night you join, you are presented with that one, but you can't wear it officially until you've done all 5. Whereas on the other one, you flip each one over singly. But that is the first part of St. Lawrence. That particular ceremony actually portrays the manner of his death because he upset a guy called the Prefect of Rome, which is where my title comes from as a district grand prefect, which is equivalent to the PGM. But the method of his death was basically to roast him over a gridiron, which is a bit horrific, but in them days probably wasn't. But that's why on our regalia, you'll find that we have little gridirons somewhere as part of the regalia, as the lapel badge. But that is the first degree. It's a relatively short one, about half an hour, but it is quite enlightening. And a nice lecture at the end that explains how, in detail, St. Lawrence met his end. But the next degrees to take can be taken in any order, in any council, and you just have to turn up at the door, and if they're doing that degree that you haven't done, you just do the degree. You just participate in it, do the usual performance of the salutes and so forth, and enjoy the night. So the next one is called the Night of Constantinople, which concerns the relationship between the Emperor Constantine and his subjects. The ceremony of this is very entertaining and amusing, but at the end of it, the candidate is left in no doubt of the importance of humility. The jewel of this degree is a Maltese cross in gold suspended on a green ribbon on which 3 poignards in gold or gilt with the points downwards. Now, this degree has some connections with the Red Cross of Constantine, obviously with the name of the Knight of Constantinople. The next one, not necessarily in order, is the Grand Towers of Solomon. This is a very dramatic degree set in a secret vault beneath the temple. As you know, as part of the Royal Arch, you go looking for this hole in the ground for the secrets of the temple. So this also has a lot of information. It's only really in the Royal and Select Master's degree. But it talks about the jewel, which is an open point, a triangle, an open point pointing downwards. But on it is the Hebrew characters 27. And on the obverse is the ineffable word of the Kabbalistic order. It's suspended from a fiery red ribbon with a grey edging. On either side is a hand holding a dagger with the point downwards. For those who are in the Rose Choir will recognise this as the 31st or 32nd degree, as well as the Royal Select Masters. So again, that one gives you the information about reflect on the danger of hasty judgment. Then you move to the Red Cross of Babylon, which covers the gap between the craft and the Royal Arch. Again, back to your connection between the different orders. In this one, Zerubbabel obtains permission to commence the rebuilding of the temple. The lesson is the importance of truth. And this one, the jewel of the seven-pointed star, again, which are two crossed swords, point upwards, suspended from a green ribbon. So again, it has spiritual importance by truth. And the final one, the Order of the High Priest, which many believe should be the last of the degrees to be taken, is a very, very impressive degree. The candidate is anointed, consecrated, and set apart to the service of God in the high priesthood. So this still has connections with the Knights Templar priests. It's a very special and uplifting ceremony, which is really rather special. It's quite a longish one and very involved with all the different people. The symbolism, the regalia, are all unique. The jewel consists of a mitre suspended on a triangle, apex pointing upwards, in gold or gilt, suspended from a ribbon. The lessons on this one are service and dedication. So you can see amongst all those, there's almost every opportunity for every lesson in humanity that Freemasonry practices in all the other different degrees. So you can understand why the 5 degrees are quite important to everybody and how it connects with the lodge, the chapter, and some of the other degrees as well. So I think that covers all our degrees in some detail for you.
It does. Brian, could you tell me how large your province is and how many conclaves you have, and also where do they meet?
Right, well, that's quite an easy one. The province is known as the District of Cheshire, North Wales. I am the District Grand Prefect, and it covers the furthest one into Wales is in Park Menai in Bangor, and the other end of the province is Duckenfield and Stalybridge. So it's quite a long, elongated area, but it's quite narrow between the River Dee and about a 20-mile wide strip, if you like. There are 9 councils, as we call them, rather than lodges, and these are pretty much spread. I've got a list of all the councils anyway, but I'll start with the furthest one, which is in Park Menai in Bangor. That one is called Deniol, which is the number 278, which is our newest council, only formed a few years ago. The next one coming around the corner is Great Orme Council. That one is number 5, 145 years old, so you can understand how old the order goes back to. This one meets in Rill, in Elway Hall. Again, proceeding round from there, we have Condate Council, which is numbering 134. That one meets in Connors Quay in Farfield Hall. We then come across onto the Whittle. We have Salem Council, which meets in Clifton Road. It's number 28. That one is a sort of mid-afternoon meeting time. Going back to Daniel, our furthest one, that one is a morning sort of meeting. But Salem Council meets at Clifton Road, and that's a midday sort of meeting. We then move on to, we have the next one is Whittle Emeritus Council, which meets in Wallasey. That's number 169. That's a midday meeting. Again, that one is quite well known. We have lots of our past district prefects have been members there, such as Keith Roberts and Alan Glazier. Then we move into Chester, go to Hugh Lupus, number 51, which meets in Queen Street in Chester. That one is an evening event. And again, that's a very, very well attended council. We then move on to out towards the other end of Cheshire. We have Commemoration Council, which meets at Oakley Hall in Macclesfield. That one again is an evening meeting. We have the 8th Council is John Welling's Council, which met in Clay Lane until they were turfed out when the building was knocked down, and are now residing in Duckenfield at the moment. And whether they go back to Clay Lane, I don't know, but that's there. And the final one is Staley Council, which meets in Stalybridge. Again, that one is number 41. So amongst those 9 councils, we have some 170 odd unique members, but around 190 composite, because there are several dual memberships. The meetings tend to be 3 or 4 times a year, and each time, apart from the installation, they have a different ceremony. You can do a ceremony on the back of an installation, because the installation ceremony itself is quite short. It's only around 25-45 minutes long at the longest. The actual ceremonial bit, the inner workings as you call it, is probably about 15 minutes, and then there's the usual 10 minutes of appointing all the officers. So that's generally the spread of my district. But also around the country, there are 18 different districts, from as far north as Northumberland and Cumberland, and down to the other end to the Channel Islands. So of those 18, I'm expected to go to as many of them as I can, and I do, more often than not, try to get to about a dozen of them in the year, and those who are way down south probably go every other year to visit a different one. So it's only fair, because they support us and we support them. So it's a well thought out one, and at each of these annual meetings, we always have a good time there. Well, I'm always well supported by my district team, which give me about 8 or 9 or more people to attend to support me as well, which is very, very good in any order. So you can understand we've got a good district, and it's very well supported by my district team of officers.
And typically, how many officers would each council have, and how often would they meet?
Right, well, that's an even easier one. The St. Lawrence the Martyr degree has almost the equal names as a craft lodge: Worship Master, 2 wardens, deacons, inner guard, treasurer, and so forth. But when you go into the other degrees, they become different titles, like the Master of the Cavalry, Chief of the Persians, and things like that. But they are equivalent to the respective similarities in the craft lodges, such as deacons, who take the candidate round. The wardens have a different title, but they still sit generally in the warden's positions. And some, like the Royal and Select Masters, where they have 3 masters, some of those are the real master and the 2 wardens, who become the 3 acting masters. So the titles are generally well known. The ritual that's behind it is totally different between each degree. So a lot of people volunteer to do their little party piece more often than not. So again, because of the difference, the regalia or the requirements for the ceremonies are totally different, from the St. Lawrence the Martyr, which is just a candidate and his jewel, and that's about it, to the Grand Tars, where you cross a bridge allegedly over the river and so forth. And there is an actual little bridge, like a little Chinese bridge to cross. So there's lots of different things to do in these more longer ceremonies, if you like.
And finally, Brian, what are the qualifications required to become a member of the Allied Masonic Degrees, and where can one find more information?
Well, to be a member of the order, you must be, first of all, a craft mason, and then have joined the Royal Arch, and then had joined the Mark. Once you're subscribed in all those three, you're eligible to join the Allied Masonic degree. We do have a website for Cheshire, which is the Allied Masons, all one word. It's alliedmason.org.uk, and on there it has a briefer description of everything I've gone through tonight. And there's also Mark Mason's Hall in London has their version of the same thing for the Allied degrees. One of the beauties of this degree is the cheapness of becoming a member, because as I said before, you only need to have that jewel as your regalia to join, nothing else. There's no collars or aprons or any other requirements. In fact, there's no aprons at all in the order at all. The only regalia we have is the jewel, so you become a past master, and then you have a conventional past master's collar, which is similar to a worship master's collar in the craft, except it's a wide one like this without the gold braid, and there's no real symbol on the bottom, so it's just a simple collar which is given to you when you're a past master. When you become a provincial officer, you have a collar such as this, but without the gold braid, and instead of that at the end, that would have the district of Cheshire, North Wales. There is no symbols in the middle, such as cross swords and so forth, when you're a provincial officer on this large collar, but you do have a small collarette, which has a smaller version of Cheshire, North Wales, which does have your badge of rank, such as DC, Treasurer, and so forth. And when you ultimately become Grand, it becomes this collar only with a simple jewel on the end, which is the same jewel whether you're a steward or the worshipful master, or sorry, senior warden. So you can see the regalia requirements are very, very low. In fact, the collarette for a provincial officer is issued to you, and year is over. So the requirements for joining, the joining fee is set by Mark Mason's Hall, which it probably was around £33, I think, at the moment. Our subs for the year for the district are just £6, and anything else is to do with the running costs of the council, which for most places around 50 or 60 or even £70. But for the candidate, it's just about £50 on the night he joins. And that's everything.
Okay, Brian Williams, thank you very much.
Well, thanks for the interview, and I hope everything goes well in the rest of the interviews you're doing with various other people. Thank you, Simon.
Thank you, Brian.